The playground slide was right under our bathroom window, only about 15 to 20 feet away in a straight line. If I had come home at 11 a.m., my usual time, I could have saved him. But that very day, Chloe's mom, Karen, had just bought a new dress and enthusiastically invited our mom group over to her place to admire it. At 11:10 a.m., when my daughter Lily and I got home, my husband, Mark, was already gone. At the funeral, I was in such agony it felt like I died and came back to life, fainting several times. Everyone sighed with pity for me. My mother-in-law, Eleanor Vance, a retired elementary school principal from rural Montana, had traveled all this way. Under everyone's watchful eyes, she walked straight up to me. Her expression was resolute as she enunciated each word. "You are the one who murdered my son." It was a typical late summer Saturday. Because he'd worked late the night before, Mark Collins woke up a bit late, sitting down for breakfast around 10 a.m. At 10:05 a.m., Lily, our daughter, urged me downstairs for the 8th time. As I knelt by the door tying Lily's shoelaces, she stuck her tongue out teasingly at her father, wiggling her legs. "Daddy's so lazy. The sun's already high up and you're just getting up. Aren't you embarrassed?" Mark chuckled, making a funny face back at her. "Lily's the mischievous one, always dragging mommy downstairs to play. Aren't you embarrassed, Lily?" I quickly grabbed a water bottle and some tissues. As I opened the door, I remembered something and turned back to tell him. "Honey, Lily's going to be a sweaty mess today. I can feel it. Remember to start filling the tub a little later, okay? So she can bathe as soon as she gets back." Our bathtub drained slowly. It took a good 20 minutes to fill. Mark, one hand holding a muffin, gave a two-fingered salute with the other. "You can count on me, ma'am. Mission accepted." I rolled my eyes at him. "Let's go." The slide was right below our condo, the liveliest spot in the complex. Kids ran back and forth, while parents gathered to chat. After sitting for a while with some familiar moms, I reached into my pocket and realized I'd rushed out without my phone. I turned to Karen next to me. "What time is it, Karen?" "I left my phone at home." Karen proudly pulled out her latest foldable smartphone, announcing loudly, "It's 10:40. Just as she finished speaking, the bathroom window of our second-floor unit opened. Mark poked his head out, calling down with a smile. "Honey, I'm starting the bathwater now. Play a little longer, then come on up." I looked over at Lily, who was already drenched in sweat from playing, and gave him an okay sign. "Got it." Mark politely waved to the other moms before closing the window. The moms started chiming in. "Your husband is truly a perfect man, so handsome and kind. I heard he made partner at the law firm this year, right? His salary must be in the high six figures, at least." "High six figures? More like 7. A lawyer of Mark's caliber? He's got to be making $1 million a year. Sarah, you can just relax and enjoy life. And he's so busy, yet he always manages to come home on time, helps with housework and cooking on weekends, always smiling, no bad habits. Compared to my husband, well, it's night and day. I'm not jealous of anything else, just the amazing love you two share. I mean, that car accident last year, he nearly died for you." The moms all nodded, sighing in admiration. Half a year ago, while Mark and I were driving to buy some plants, a large truck rear-ended us, causing our car to flip. Soon after, the front of the car caught fire. His driver's seat was facing upwards, so people quickly pulled him out. I was trapped underneath, unable to move. Seeing the fire grow larger, people started backing away. Only Mark frantically pulled and tugged, his hands bleeding from shattered glass, his voice hoarse from screaming. "Save my wife. Please, someone save her." Less than 5 seconds after he managed to pull me out, the car exploded. The incident was filmed and posted online, going viral. Netizens said I must have saved the world in a past life to find a husband who loved me so much. Recalling that day, my eyes welled up. Mark usually seemed so gentle and composed. I never expected him to be so brave and fearless in a crisis. Afterward, 2 of his fingers suffered nerve damage, making delicate movements difficult. I cried with pity for him. He stroked my head, comforting me. "It's okay. I make a living with my brain, anyway. Even if I lost 2 more fingers, it wouldn't stop me from providing for you." Now, amidst the mom's cooing, I nodded sincerely. "Yes, he really is a perfect husband. My husband's no slouch either," Karen said loudly. This time back from Paris, my husband bought me several expensive designer dresses, absolutely gorgeous. "Come on, let's go to my place, and I'll show you." Karen was in a May-December marriage and always wanted to show off how much her husband loved her, to prove she married for love, not money. I smiled and shook my head. "I can't. I need to get Lily upstairs for her bath. You all go ahead." Karen loved to compete with me and immediately looked displeased. "Your husband just said to come up later. It won't take long at my place. Surely you can spare me a few minutes?" At 11 a.m., I left Karen's apartment. At 11:05 a.m., I caught Lily, who was running wildly by the slide, and pulled her home. At first, she resisted. Just 5 more minutes, Mom, please. Just 5 last minutes, she pleaded, but I refused, saying the bathwater would get cold. She reluctantly said goodbye to her friends, and the parents sitting around chuckled at the scene, seemingly agreeing with my decision. At 11:08 a.m., Lily and I reached the second floor and ran into our single neighbor from across the hall, Tom Dwyer, who was taking out the trash. He blushed slightly as he greeted me. Lily tugged his hand, asking sweetly when he'd help her with her Legos again. At the same time, I took out my keys to open the door. At 11:09 a.m., while Lily was saying goodbye to Tom in the hallway, I went straight to the bathroom because I called out honey and got no answer. At 11:10 a.m., I let out a blood-curdling scream. Mark's pale face was submerged under the water, his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. He had stopped breathing. Many people came to the funeral. Mark's colleagues and friends, familiar neighbors from the condo complex, and even a representative from a charity organization carrying a wreath. It was then that people learned Mark had been secretly donating to children in impoverished mountain regions through the charity for years, $20,000 annually, totaling over $100,000. People lamented, such a good man, and fate is so cruel. Why did this accident have to happen to him? It's true, the good die young, and the wicked live 1,000 years. A few years ago, Attorney Collins was even doing pro bono legal aid. He just made partner this year. He said he was going to work even harder for his wife and child. I can't believe it. They were so in love. How will Sarah cope? She's fainted several times in just a few days. Luckily, some community volunteers have been staying by her side. Sarah doesn't have an income, and they still have a mortgage. If Mark were alive, they'd have paid it off in a year or two. It's going to be very difficult for them now. This incident was so unexpected. They said after he fell unconscious, the water took 20 minutes to slowly rise above his mouth and nose. If he had woken up during that time, or if Sarah had come home, he could have been saved. Sigh, I guess it was just his time. Amidst the murmurs, I sat slumped to one side, pale-faced, staring blankly at Mark's photo. For days, I had been consumed by overwhelming grief, crying my heart out, fainting multiple times. Anyone who saw me couldn't help but sigh. A community volunteer sat beside me, occasionally offering words of comfort. Karen approached, saying guiltily, "Sarah, I'm so sorry. If you hadn't come to my place that day and wasted time, maybe Mark wouldn't have died." Towards the end, she covered her mouth and sobbed. I shook my head in anguish. "No, it has nothing to do with you. It's all my fault. I told him to run the bathwater. I forgot my phone, so he had to open the window to call me, and then he fell. I said I'd be home at 11, and then I dallied for another 10 minutes. It's all my fault. I killed him." The community volunteer quickly interjected. "Sarah, don't think like that. It was just a terrible, unforeseeable accident. Besides, the police said it was an accident, a very low probability one." That day, when I screamed, Tom Dwyer was the first to rush in. After realizing the situation, he immediately blocked Lily from entering and called 911 for me. After the police examined the scene and took statements, they preliminarily reconstructed the accident as follows. 10:40 a.m., Mark Collins turned on the bathtub faucet and simultaneously opened the window to talk to me. Because the window was next to the tub and opened inwards, he must have leaned out. When closing it, he unfortunately lost his balance, fell, hit his head on the bathtub, and lost consciousness. 10:40 a.m. to 11 a.m. The water slowly rose until it submerged his head. 11 a.m. to 11:05 a.m. After 5 minutes of submersion, Mark Collins died of asphyxiation. He never regained consciousness during this process, as there were no signs of struggle or water splashed outside. 11:10 a.m. I returned home and discovered the accident scene. During this period, from when Mark Collins appeared at the window until I returned home, no strangers entered or exited the hallway. The scene showed no suspicious signs. Conclusion: an accidental incident. Someone shook their head and sighed. It's just like they say, when your number's up, it's up. Huh, who's that at the door? It's so hot. Why are they dressed so warmly? Yeah, aren't they hot? I kept my head down, feeling like an empty shell, numb to everything around me. She's walking towards Sarah. Don't tell me she's here to ask for condolence money from the grieving family? That's too much. This isn't a happy occasion. A pair of gray women's sneakers appeared before my eyes. The style was old, with a small, matching patch, and a bit dusty, as if telling of the long journey they had made. "Sarah, do you recognize me?" A slightly hoarse voice spoke. The sound was very close, right by my ear. I slowly looked up. Before me was the face of an elderly woman. Her skin was dry and wrinkled, her temples grayed, her eyelids drooped, but her eyes shone brightly. In the sweltering summer heat, she wore an unseasonably thin jacket, carrying a faded black bag in one hand and an old travel mug in the other. "My name is Eleanor Vance." I'm the mother-in-law you've never met. I looked at her with empty eyes, but my tired neurons began to fire, connecting. My eyes widened. Mom. Eleanor Vance slowly nodded. Good. You recognize me. People gathered around. So, it's Mark's mother. Sigh. It's a terrible thing for a parent to bury a child. Please, ma'am, try to stay strong. It's good you're here. Family can support each other. Sarah and Lily won't feel so alone. Someone kindly offered to take Eleanor's bag and mug, but she gently shook her head, refusing. She looked at Mark's portrait, then directly at me. The day I heard my son died, I rushed here from Kalispell to tell the police one thing. She stared at me, her expression firm, enunciating each word. You are the one who murdered my son. After Eleanor Vance said those words, she turned and left. No one could stop her. She appeared suddenly, and disappeared just as suddenly. It seemed she had come just to say that one sentence. People looked at each other in confusion, then came to comfort me. Sarah, perhaps the old lady is overwrought with grief. Don't take it to heart. You can't afford to be both heartbroken and angry right now. That's right. Some older folks from rural areas are less informed and don't understand the situation. Maybe she heard some gossip and believed it. Things will clear up if you talk it over slowly. Why have we never met Attorney Collins' mother before? She shows up right after he passes. Don't tell me she's here to fight for custody or assets. Never met. Never even heard of her. Sarah, that old lady just said she'd never met you. Are you sure she's really Mark's mother? I said nothing, feeling so weak I could barely stand. A community volunteer handed me a cup of hot tea. All right, everyone, let's not ask any more questions. The most important thing now is to handle the funeral arrangements properly and let Sarah rest. Other matters can be dealt with later. I bowed my head and sipped the hot tea, my mind gradually clearing a little. Yes, Eleanor Vance was indeed Mark Collins' biological mother. 8 years ago, when Mark and I got married, I met this mother-in-law for the first time via video call. She divorced Mark's father when Mark was 15, gave up everything, and moved to teach in rural Montana. Mother and son had been estranged since then, with no contact for years. After Mark's father passed away, Mark, by then somewhat established, managed to find her after many inquiries and wanted to bring her home to care for her. She refused, saying that when she decided to move to the mountains, she vowed never to leave that land. Over the years, Mark had visited her in Montana twice by himself. I only video chatted with her briefly on Lily's birthday each year. Now, I was plunged into deep confusion and bewilderment. I didn't understand this woman who had sworn never to leave Montana. Why had she suddenly traveled so far? Why had she suddenly said such a thing to me? In my grief, I couldn't find an answer. After the funeral, Eleanor Vance did not leave the city. She stayed. Not in my condo, of course, but in a small motel near the train station. Late at night, the bright moon hung high, illuminating the joys and sorrows of the world. I sat alone, looking at Mark's photo and wiping my tears, a decision forming in my heart. Whatever her purpose in coming here, the child, the assets, or some misunderstanding. Ultimately, she was my husband's mother, my child's grandmother. I couldn't completely ignore her. The next day, I packed some daily necessities, bedding, and knocked on Tom Dwyer's door across the hall. He saw me, a flicker of emotion in his eyes. He awkwardly smoothed his hair and clothes. I carefully asked for his help, inquiring if he was free and if he could give me a ride. Of course. I'm always free for you, he said, looking at me. Tom Dwyer drove Lily and me to the small motel near the train station. The motel was old and dim, with a sign outside. Rooms $60 per night. Mommy, Grandma lives here. This place is so run down. Can we bring her home with us? Lily's innocent voice rang out. I sighed. Your grandma is a bit stubborn, honey. She wouldn't agree. Tom Dwyer approached, carrying several bags. Sarah, there's a lot of stuff. Let me help you carry it up. I hesitated. No, that's too much trouble. You can just wait for us here. A hint of concern crossed Tom's face. He said gently, that old lady said those things to you. If you two are alone and an argument breaks out, I can be there to keep an eye on things. Most importantly, we don't want to scare Lily. I nodded, tiredly saying, then I'll have to trouble you. When I saw Eleanor Vance again, she was sitting in the sparsely furnished room, fiddling with her phone. Seeing me at the door, she paused for a moment, then stood up, her expression calm. I took a deep breath and spoke slowly. Mom, I know you probably don't want to live with me, so I brought some things for you. Whatever misunderstanding you have about me, I hope you'll consider Mark and Lily and not refuse this small gesture. I turned to look at Tom Dwyer. He carried the things in, set them down, and quietly retreated to the hallway. Eleanor Vance stood there without speaking, neither agreeing nor refusing, looking at me with an expressionless face. Lily timidly stepped forward, whispering, Grandma, why don't you come live with us? Mommy said Daddy went on a very long business trip and won't be back for a long time. Can you come live with us, and we can wait for Daddy together? In that instant, Eleanor Vance's gaze softened slightly. Her rough hand gently stroked Lily's head, her wrinkled eye sockets turning red. Lily, sweetie, Grandma has something very important to do. I can't come home with you just yet. Grandma, I miss Daddy. Do you miss Daddy too? Yes, Grandma. Also misses your daddy very much. She looked calm, but her trembling voice betrayed her suppressed emotions. I turned and whispered something to Tom Dwyer. He immediately stepped in and coaxed Lily downstairs. Only Eleanor Vance and I remained in the room. The small motel was sandwiched between towering buildings, with only a few faint rays of light filtering in through the shabby window. The hustle and bustle outside only emphasized the silence of this narrow corner. I've already reported it. Eleanor Vance looked at me calmly and suddenly spoke. I was startled, sighing softly by the dark window frame. The police already investigated me thoroughly. I had no time to commit the crime, no means, and no motive. Mark's death is 100 harms and no benefits to my current life. How could I possibly harm him? Mom, I really don't understand why you insist I killed my husband. So, this is the purpose of your visit today? Eleanor Vance's voice was low and hoarse. Are you very curious why I, thousands of miles away, knew you were the real murderer of Mark, so you came, right? A sense of sorrow and helplessness welled up inside me. I wanted to say something, then felt that saying anything more was pointless. If you're so convinced I'm the killer, then just wait for the police to conclude their investigation. I said sadly, then turned to leave. Just as I had taken a few steps down the hallway, Eleanor Vance's low voice came from behind me. Actually, I wasn't entirely sure at first. But today you came, and you brought that young man. You deliberately wanted to mislead me, to make me think there was something suspicious between you and that man, didn't you? You wanted to lead me to have the police investigate in that direction so they wouldn't find any real clues. Now, I am certain you are the killer. As her last word fell, the hallway suddenly became quiet. I slowly turned around. In the dark, narrow hallway, facing her silently, I was summoned to the Criminal Investigation Division for questioning. It was the first time in my life I had ever stepped inside a police station's detective unit. I was both anxious and a little helpless, so much so that when the officer handed me a glass of water, my hand was so weak I spilled half of it on his sleeve. You don't need to be so tense. The deceased's mother filed a report, so we're just conducting a routine investigation. The two detectives sitting across from me tried to reassure me. We have a basic understanding of your movements on that day. We just want to confirm a few things with you now. Please answer truthfully. I nodded silently. First question, who suggested running the bathwater beforehand? I did. Why? Pausing for a few seconds, I spoke slowly. Lily is very active. Every time she plays, she gets drenched in sweat, and that bathtub fills very slowly, taking over 20 minutes for just over half a tub. I was worried Lily would catch a cold, so I asked Mark to start the water early, thinking she could bathe immediately upon returning. Second question, why didn't you bring your phone that day? I mumbled. I don't know what happened that day. Normally, I would never forget my phone, but that day I did. The phone was right on the shoe cabinet, but I just forgot it. The two detectives exchanged a glance, then continued. This summer break, you took your daughter downstairs almost every morning around 10 a.m., played at the condo playground for about an hour, and returned home at 11 a.m. But why were you 10 minutes late that day? My eyes turned red, my voice hoarse. I went to a neighbor's house. Actually, I didn't want to go at first, but I felt obligated. She said a few words, and I felt bad declining. Your husband died in your own bathroom. Why was your neighbor from across the hall, Tom Dwyer, also at the scene first? Tom Dwyer. I paused, trying to recall for a long moment. When I entered the house, Lily was still in the hallway talking to Tom. I called for my husband, but got no answer, so I went into the bathroom. The bathroom is opposite the main door. I collapsed at the doorway and screamed. Tom immediately rushed in. The older detective suddenly smiled faintly, then seriously interrupted me. Ms. Collins, from the last time Mark Collins was seen until the discovery of his death, every step you took has a perfect witness. Isn't that a bit too coincidental? I stared at him, stunned, then lowered my head, clutching my face with both hands. Muffled sobs escaped through my fingers. Yes, it's all my fault. For over 20 minutes, my husband was slowly dying, alone and helpless, while I was casually lingering at Karen's house, wasting time coaxing Lily home, even spending time chatting with a neighbor in the hallway. I killed him. I'm the one who murdered my husband. I choked out those sentences, trembling. Sorrow, pain, fear, self-blame, all sorts of emotions surged like a tide, wildly churning within my already exhausted body. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I fainted. When I woke up, I found myself in a small infirmary room. Outside, the wind had picked up at some point. The wind blew the window open, carrying soft whispers from the hallway into the room. Do you think she's got a problem? Hard to say. Although her alibi is full of coincidences, each step is a reasonably plausible event in her daily life. I asked during the previous investigation. Karen said inviting her over was a spur-of-the-moment thing, and the neighbor across the hall just happened to be taking out the trash. Moreover what? Other suspects try their best to clear their names, but she's the opposite. She takes responsibility for everything. Even things that could be clearly explained, she speaks vaguely. This kind of behavior means either she's truly had a massive breakdown and lost her composure, or she's a criminal with an outstanding mind and psychological fortitude. An ordinary housewife, so stressed she couldn't even hold a glass of water steadily. You just agitated her a little, and she lost emotional control. Could she be the killer? I don't know. But even if she is the killer, there's still one crucial point that can't be explained. Which point? The method of killing. Right. Even if she's a rare high IQ criminal who meticulously planned every detail, how could she ensure Mark Collins would definitely fall when opening the window? And even if he fell, how could she ensure he'd be instantly knocked unconscious? Excuse me for interrupting your conversation, but my daughter is home alone. May I leave now? The two detectives abruptly turned their heads, surprised to see me standing behind them. I bowed my head, my face pale, so weak I could barely stand. The older detective cleared his throat. If you're all right, then today's questioning can end. Thank you. I whispered my thanks and left. After taking 2 steps, I turned back, looked at them, and said slowly, "Officers, I don't know what my mother-in-law did to make you reinvestigate this, but for my daughter and me to live in peace, I think I should make things clear. What you just said about alibis, methods of killing, I don't understand any of it. But I know that doing something requires a reason. I have no reason whatsoever to kill my husband. I'm sure you've investigated this very thoroughly. Thank you for handling my husband's case." I bowed to them and turned to leave. As I slowly walked out of the Criminal Investigation Division's courtyard, the two of them were still standing in the hallway smoking, the smoke thick in the air. "What were you saying earlier? You said we deliberately let her overhear our conversation. Psychologically, when a perpetrator sees the police stumped because of them, they will unconsciously reveal their true reactions when alone, and then we'd give the camera footage of her to an expert for analysis. But just now, she actively approached us. So what does this count as?" The older detective quietly took a drag from his cigarette, muttering to his colleague, "Counts as a waste of effort. I went to the Criminal Investigation Division in the morning. By the time I got home, it was already dark. Dragging my tired, weak body, I knocked on Tom Dwyer's door. He was a freelance concept artist and often stayed home. I had left Lily at his place today. After Lily went into her room with a pile of toys, he suddenly whispered, 'Lily's grandmother is live streaming.' I narrowed my eyes. What? 2 days ago, when I took Lily downstairs at the motel to wait for you, I heard the front desk clerk complaining that some old country lady was learning to live stream, asking her so many questions it drove her crazy. Hearing that, I paid a bit of attention. These past 2 days, I've been browsing online, and sure enough, I found it. Look, this is the live stream room. Not many viewers, but she's been live streaming all day. I turned on the TV for Lily, saw she was engrossed in cartoons, and then quietly went into my room. Leaning against the headboard, I closed my eyes and thought for a moment, then took out my phone and found the live stream room titled, 'Truth Will Never Be Buried.' Eleanor Vance sat upright before the camera. She still wore that old, thin jacket, and behind her was the peeling, mottled white wall of the motel. The live stream chat had a few scattered comments. Old person filter? Works pretty well. This is real. This old lady's son died. She suspects her daughter-in-law killed him and is seeking help online. Got it. Another case of a child dying. So they go online creating drama, begging for sympathy. In the end, it's either for views or to demand more money." Eleanor Vance's time-worn eyes flickered. She suddenly spoke. "I don't need money. I'm a retired elementary school teacher. My monthly pension is $2,280. Right. You don't need money. If you don't need money, go report it to the police. Why look for truth online? Insider here. I live in the same condo complex where it happened. Actually, it was just an accident. Her son and daughter-in-law were very much in love. They were the couple in that exploding car accident near the Beltway Bridge half a year ago. Oh, I know. That news was huge back then. Everyone was moved by their devoted love. I even cried. I remember now too. The husband risked his life to save his wife, and now they're saying the wife killed the husband? I wouldn't believe it in a million years. Ma'am, have you seen a doctor? You can't just accuse someone based on suspicion." Eleanor Vance stared at the screen, calmly saying, "I'm not speculating. I've already reported it to the police. I learned to live stream not for money, not to fight for my grandchild, not for views, or anything like that. I just want to find the truth about my son's death. My son's name was Mark Collins. He was intelligent, lively, and polite since childhood, a gifted child. Everyone around him liked him. Everyone praised him. Once, I sprained my ankle outside, and he gritted his teeth and carried me several miles home. He was only 11 then, small and thin, not even up to my shoulder. At 14, he excitedly showed me his high school entrance exam scores. But that same day, I had to leave that house because of my divorce from his father. Later, I often dreamed of him that day, carefully clutching my clothes, his face helpless and scared, constantly saying, "Mom, don't go." Tears welled up in her eyes, slowly tracing paths down her wrinkled face. A week ago, my son Mark Collins died, at the beautiful age of 35, drowned in his own bathtub. Everyone tells me it was just an accident, but I know it wasn't. He was murdered. That year, I decisively pushed his hand away. Now, I've come back for him. Although I am an incapable mother, without connections or abilities, since I am here, I will absolutely not let my son die alone, his death unexplained. Her voice was old and tired, but her eyes were incredibly bright, the tenderness and resilience of a mother intertwined, emanating from her. The livestream room suddenly fell silent. Then, comments started to get agitated. "I believe this isn't acting. I don't think any actor could be this real. Ma'am, we'll help you. I just screen recorded. I'll cut it into short clips and share it so more people see it. Maybe someone can provide some information." I stared at the screen, at Eleanor Vance on the screen. "Mommy." I suddenly looked up. I don't know when Lily had entered the room. She was standing beside me. I quickly turned off my phone screen, forcing a smile. "What is it, sweetie?" She held up a pretty box, saying excitedly, "Mommy, look. I found a secret." Lily and I sat on the living room rug, slowly opening the gift box. The first thing that caught my eye was a beautiful card. On it was a line of elegant, flowing script. Lily was in first grade. Every night, Mark would spend time teaching her to recognize words. She knew 2,000 or 3,000 words. She looked at the card and read each word. "Happy birthday to my beautiful wife. May you always be beautiful and happy. Your husband will love you forever." Haha, it's a birthday gift from Daddy to Mommy. I silently looked at the expensive designer handbag in the box. Once, while strolling through a mall, Mark and I had seen this bag. I really liked it then, but it cost $2,800, so I only admired it a few more times. I never expected Mark to buy it secretly. My birthday was next week. Perhaps he intended to surprise me next week. Lily suddenly hugged me tightly, sobbing grievously. "Mommy, why isn't Daddy back yet? I miss Daddy so much. I miss him so much every night I can't sleep. When is Daddy coming back, Mommy?" I spread my arms and hugged her tightly. "Daddy went to a very far away place, and will be gone for a very, very long time. Don't be scared, Lily. Mommy will always be with you." A tear silently fell onto her hair. Then another. When Lily slowly fell asleep in her small bed, her eyes were still swollen. I gently kissed her small face, stood up, and left her room. It was late summer now. The sweltering heat had subsided. Outside the window, rain began to fall with a pitter-patter. In the sound of the falling rain, I walked through the quiet house, past the living room, into the bathroom. The bathroom, where Mark Collins died. I took out my phone and opened Eleanor Vance's live stream. As expected, she was still live streaming. The number of viewers had increased slightly, comments scrolled continuously, and netizens were helping her analyze possible motives for murder. She focused on the comments, answering each point. Not a crime of passion, the police investigated. Neither had issues with infidelity. Not for money either. When they got married, they each contributed half their savings to buy this condo. They've been paying the mortgage for years. My son even donated to charity every year. They didn't have much savings. I placed the phone on the sink, with Eleanor Vance's voice answering netizens as a backdrop. I slowly turned around, looking towards the bathtub. One corner of the bathtub was fitted snugly into the bathroom wall, without a gap. I slowly climbed over. A flash of lightning lit up the window. The bathroom ceiling light flickered twice. Without looking up, I wedged my hands into the corner edge of the bathtub and lifted. A small, hidden space was revealed, containing a neatly folded stack of drawings. One grew up in the south, one in the north. They met and fell in love in college. Before that, they had no connection whatsoever. Along with Eleanor Vance's voice, I slowly straightened up from inside the bathtub, flipping through the drawings one by one. Each sheet was densely covered in writing, filled with diagrams calculating various angles. From a person's height, the maximum angle the window could open, the body's inclination when bending down, to the fall position at different angles. Flipping to one particular sheet, I paused. On it was a small, neatly written line. Contingency Plan 7, Step-by-Step Analysis and Feasibility. The drawing in the middle depicted an adult man lying supine in a bathtub, slowly being submerged by water past his mouth and nose. I took out a basin and placed all the drawings inside. Another flash of lightning tore across the night sky, and the lights suddenly went out. The bathroom plunged into darkness. I struck a match and tossed it into the basin. The flames slowly spread, gradually consuming the drawings. All the writing, all the diagrams, were slowly vanishing. Actually, I don't like writing by hand, but electronic files, more or less, will leave traces. After emptying all the black ashes from the basin into the toilet, I turned around, staring intently at the old face on the phone. In the dark, quiet space, a whisper sounded. "Eleanor Vance, why did you say that sentence?" At the same time, Eleanor Vance looked into the camera. Why on earth did she want to kill my son? I listed the condo for sale on a real estate platform. Eleanor Vance came straight to my door. She stood at the entrance. "You are not allowed to sell the house." I was surprised by how quickly she got the information. But thinking of the people in her live stream, I wasn't surprised anymore. I said slowly, "I have to pay about $2,800 a month for this condo's mortgage. The loan term is still 15 years. I can't afford it. I have no source of income. Lily and I need money to live on until I find a job. Mark's burial plot also needs money. If I don't sell the house, what other choice do I have?" Eleanor Vance stared at me, enunciating each word. The dead have not yet closed their eyes. I leaned against the door, sighing softly. But the living must go on, right? The sound of hurried footsteps echoed on the stairs. Community volunteers and Karen, along with other neighbors, were carrying a pile of things up the stairs. They were slightly surprised to see Eleanor Vance. Karen suddenly said loudly, "Mrs. Vance, we've all been to the police station these past few days, voluntarily, to prove Sarah's innocence." The neighbors chimed in. "That's right, we're all her witnesses." "Ma'am, you're being unreasonable. Lily is your own granddaughter. Why must you stir things up like this? It's not good for either of them. They've suffered enough." Eleanor Vance said nothing, her thin lips pressed into a tight line, neither entering nor leaving. People shook their heads and sighed, placing their condolence gifts inside the house, and then offering me more words of comfort. When I saw them off, Eleanor Vance was still standing in the hallway. I thought for a moment and said to her, "I will definitely sell this condo. Legally, I have full rights to decide about this apartment. Standing here won't do you any good. If you won't come in, I'll close the door." I was about to close the door when Eleanor Vance suddenly spoke. "Are you the relative of a victim in that serial killing case targeting disabled people from years ago?" My hand left the doorknob. I slowly looked up at her. She looked straight back at me, her gaze unwavering. In the quiet hallway, a hoarse voice sounded. "I received a private message on social media, saying it was from an acquaintance of yours back home. That person told me your mother had polio and was one of the victims in that serial killing case targeting disabled people. Although Mark only visited me twice, we often video chatted. For years, he told me almost everything, from work to daily life, but I never heard Mark mention this. So he probably didn't know, right? But I once heard him say that when he was a master's student, he followed his supervising professor to participate in the defense of a suspect in that serial killing case. They eventually won the case. The suspect was found innocent. At that time, Mark told me this story from his past with a proud tone. "I've never understood why you killed Mark. Everyone said you had no motive. Even the police told me so. But if you hated Mark for helping the killer who murdered your mother, would that count as a motive for murder?" As the last word ended, because she had forcefully enunciated each word, it left layers of echoes in the hallway. I bowed my head in silence for a moment. "Lily's at school. No one's home. Would you like to come in and talk, Mom?" Eleanor Vance stepped inside. This was the first time she had set foot in the place where her son had once lived. It was evident she was somewhat emotional. Her hands were clenched, her chest heaving. When her gaze swept past the bathroom, it flickered slightly, and she quickly looked away. I went to the kitchen to pour her some tea. She shook her head, indicating she didn't want any, looking at me with a wary expression. "If you have something to say, just say it." I pursed my lips. I took out my phone, made a call, and spoke softly for a few moments. Soon, a video call came through. She looked at me, puzzled. "This is attorney David Kwan, Mark's college friend and a partner at his law firm. He also participated in the defense of that serial killing case you just mentioned." Eleanor Vance took the phone, looking at the person in the video. Attorney Kwan's steady voice came through. "Mrs. Vance, I met you at the funeral. Please accept my deepest condolences. I don't know why you're interested in that serial killing defense case. Ms. Collins asked me to explain the situation back then. I assure you, everything I say is the truth. In our second year of our master's program, as students who helped our supervising professor handle documents for that defense, Mark and I were just gophers, not even considered junior assistants. The outcome of the case was that the suspect had sufficient evidence to prove he couldn't have committed the crime, and the court declared him innocent at trial. I thanked Attorney Kwan and hung up. Then I looked at Eleanor Vance, calmly saying, "From beginning to end, I knew Mark's role and contribution in this case. The suspect was indeed proven innocent. Mom, how could I kill him over something like that? As for not telling Mark about my connection to this case, I was severely traumatized at the time and developed a panic disorder. My doctor advised me to forget about it, to completely erase it from my life. Later, I did just that. So after meeting Mark, I only said my father died young, and my mother died in an accident. That day, when Eleanor Vance left, her expression was very complicated, both bewildered and disappointed. I expedited the sale of the house. Although someone had died there, luckily the case was ruled an accident, not a homicide, so it wasn't considered a haunted house. I also lowered the price considerably, so people started coming to view it. I often waited until Lily was fast asleep before watching Eleanor Vance's live stream. She still hadn't given up. Every night, she would sit there upright, clumsily but seriously answering netizens' questions. But she no longer pointed the finger directly at me. She only said she was waiting for the results of the police investigation. I still didn't know why she was so certain I had killed Mark Collins. But I knew her reasons weren't convincing enough. At least they couldn't be considered concrete evidence. I gradually felt more at ease. Until today, she suddenly appeared again. Knock, knock, forceful, persistent, knocking on my door. As soon as I opened it, she pushed past me and rushed into the house, rummaging everywhere. Her face flushed, her expression agitated. I couldn't help but ask, "Mom, what are you looking for?" She turned her head, staring at me. It was total paralysis, wasn't it? I pursed my lips, silently looking straight at her. Her cloudy eyes blazed, her trembling voice uttering each broken but forceful word. "The police told me you had no motive, no means of committing the crime. You have a solid alibi. You have many witnesses. No one could guarantee Mark would fall, let alone fall unconscious in the bathtub immediately." For days, I've been thinking about these words, thinking until I was obsessed. Then last night, I had a dream. I dreamed of Mark when he was 8 or 9. That year, I took him to a friend's house. He was playing and suddenly fell down, completely rigid and motionless. I was terrified, but then I saw his eyes were still darting around. He was conscious, but his limbs were completely immobile. This lasted for an hour before he slowly recovered. Later, the doctor asked what he had been doing at the time, and discovered he was allergic to the daffodils at my friend's house, a severe allergy. Just smelling them caused immediate total paralysis. Mark once told me you loved to grow houseplants, that you had them all over the house. So I'm sure you discovered this condition of his. That day, you somehow exposed him to daffodils, causing him to become totally paralyzed, fall into the bathtub, and slowly drown in despair. As she spoke, her chest heaved, her eyes bloodshot as if about to weep blood. "Mom," I spoke slowly, "what you're saying is just a dream. How can it be considered real?" She went through the house, room by room. "Where are the houseplants? The ones I saw last time I was here, where are they all now?" I said calmly. "Some plants were thrown out, some were given away." She gritted her teeth. "That proves you have a guilty conscience, hastily destroying evidence." I looked at her. "Mom, this condo is about to be sold, so I have to dispose of things I can't take with me." Eleanor Vance looked at me silently for a moment, gradually calming down, her voice low and steady. "Destroying them is useless. As long as the medical examiner's autopsy reveals Mark was paralyzed before he died, your alibi will be useless, and you'll be a suspect. The rest, just peel it back layer by layer, step by step, and the truth of my son's death will be exposed." I looked at her, sighing softly. I walked past her, lifted an urn from the cabinet behind her, cradled it gently, and said softly, "Mom, Mark wouldn't be happy to hear you say these things." Eleanor Vance stared, stunned, at the urn in my hands, her pupils slowly dilating. According to the investigation, Mark's death was just an accident. As soon as I got the death certificate, I claimed Mark's body. I originally intended to inform you, but Mark had waited in the morgue for too long. I was afraid he'd be cold, so I thought it best to cremate him early, to let him rest in peace. Mom, you miss him very much too, don't you? Here, you hold him too. I offered the urn to the woman before me. Eleanor Vance's face turned deathly pale. She collapsed to the ground, her whole body trembling like a leaf, wailing piteously. Why? He was so good, so gentle. Why on earth did you want to kill him? I looked down at her, at the woman who had traveled so far for her son. My eyes held both pity and coldness. Epilogue. The house was sold. Though the price was much lower than market value, I got $450,000, enough for Lily and me to live on for a long time. I rented a small 2-bedroom apartment near Lily's school. After she started school, I could look for a job. Though the days ahead wouldn't be like before, there was still hope. On the last night before moving, Lily was fast asleep. Outside, a storm raged. I slowly walked through the somewhat empty house, reminiscing. My phone vibrated. A message had arrived. I indifferently picked it up to look, then froze. The sender was Mark Collins. My eyes widened as I tremblingly opened it. Honey, if you receive this message, it means I haven't logged into the software for a month, causing this scheduled message to be sent. Something has probably happened to me. Honey, I love you, but I have to apologize. I have a secret. Unfortunately, I can't tell you this secret because it's too shocking, too hard for the world to accept. This is a secret destined to go to the grave with me. Because of this secret, on one hand, I live a normal life like anyone else. On the other, I'm like a ghost, always fearful, afraid someone will come to harm me. When I was younger, I was very naive, dreaming of leaving a mark on history, for better or worse, and I even acted on it. Now I realize how foolish that idea was. But deep down, I'm still that naive soul, still unwilling to depart silently one day. So even though this is what I deserve, I couldn't help but prepare a little. I've installed pinhole cameras in the house, at the law firm, in the car, in every room, every nook and cranny, wherever I might be. Honey, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. It's not that I wanted to spy, but so that if something unexpected happened to me, the police could use those clues to find my killer. I've installed a total of 21 cameras. Below is the installation diagram and the login password link. In this world, I can only trust two people, you and my mother. So I've set this message to be sent to both of you simultaneously, just in case. The window rattled violently. I stared blankly behind me. The window shook fiercely, the storm outside howled, the wind and rain like 1,000 lightning bolts, shaking the heavens and earth. I closed my eyes and clicked the blue link. A diagram marking 21 locations, each with a link and login password for the camera there. Clear, specific, detailed. My gaze swept over it, and I found one of the cameras. Stunned for a moment, I stood up and walked into the bathroom. Standing in the middle of the room, I slowly looked up. It was an ordinary-looking ceiling-mounted light fixture. One of the camera locations marked on the diagram. Also the place Mark had stared at with wide eyes as he drowned. I pursed my lips, my trembling finger accessing the camera feed. Following the dates and times in my memory, I replayed it segment by segment. I saw myself measuring the window opening angle again and again, simulating possible fall positions and impact points. Saw myself sitting in the bathtub, pen in hand, constantly writing and drawing, then carefully folding everything and hiding it in the corner of the tub late at night. Saw that morning, me stealthily swapping the plan in my bag with the one originally on the windowsill. Saw Mark's body stiffen, falling backward into the bathtub after leaning out to wave. Saw him staring in terror, helplessly watching the water slowly submerge him. I closed my eyes, preparing to exit the screen. Suddenly, I heard a faint, soft gurgling sound. Very faint, but very clear, intermittent, as if coming from a cramped space, suppressed. I opened my eyes and looked around. The wind howled outside, but the window was closed tight, and the bathroom was eerily quiet. The gurgling sound came again, more heavily. I looked down and suddenly realized the sound was coming from my phone. I stared at the screen in horror. In the middle of the screen, Mark Collins stared at me with wide eyes, his throat struggling to make a sound. But it was too faint to understand. I turned the phone's volume to maximum, then pressed it close to my ear. A moan, like pain and sorrow, entered my ear. I know who you are. The wind howled outside the window. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, silent for a long time. Half an hour later, I slowly stood up. Before leaving, I went into Lily's room to check on her. She was sleeping soundly. I bent down and gently kissed her forehead. Then I grabbed my car keys, opened the door, and left the house. I drove through the raging storm, through the debris-strewn road, to the small motel where Eleanor Vance was staying. The front desk was empty. I went straight upstairs, leisurely walking down the dark hallway to Eleanor Vance's room. The door was ajar. She sat on the edge of the bed, a small, yellow desk lamp on, her back to me, looking at her phone. I walked in, came up behind her. Eleanor Vance suddenly turned around. Seeing my face clearly, she seemed calmer. I knew you'd come. I said, and sat down on the only chair in the room. Eleanor Vance stood up, looked out the window, and frowned slightly. I called the police 10 minutes before you arrived. How much time you have to talk depends on how quickly they get here. I tilted my head and smiled faintly. In this weather, I probably have plenty of time. Eleanor Vance looked at me coldly, her voice icy. Sarah Collins, why did you kill my son? I squinted, looking at the leaves fluttering outside the window, and said slowly, when my mother was killed, I was less than 50 yards away from her. My mother had congenital polio. After my father died, she sold dumpling soup day and night to support my education. We relied on each other. On the evening of my 18th year, because it suddenly started raining heavily, I was a little late picking up my mother to close her stall. After reaching the public bus stop, I noticed my pant cuffs were wet, so I sat down to roll them up. In the heavy rain, I saw a person in a raincoat slowly approaching, holding a bowl of dumpling soup bought from my mother's stall. He sat down on the rain-soaked bench. From my angle, I could just see his dangling hand. He hummed a tune distractedly while using one hand to twirl a ring, moving it from his ring finger to his middle finger, then to his index finger. It was a particularly complex and meticulous movement, but he did it so smoothly, as if he had practiced it thousands of times. I finished rolling up my cuffs and was about to stand up when I saw him throw the bowl of dumpling soup into the middle of the road. Then, from somewhere, he pulled out a knife. Fresh blood dripped from the tip, mixing with the rainwater. I was so scared I didn't dare move until he had sat there long enough and slowly walked away. That night, my mother became the third victim in the sensational serial killing case targeting disabled people. I provided clues to the police, but the killer was never caught. Because of this, I developed a panic disorder. On my doctor's advice, I buried this incident in my memory. Later, I lived a normal life like any other girl, studied, and met Mark Collins in college. He fell in love with me at first sight. After pursuing me for a year, we fell deeply in love, got married, and had a child. Occasionally, in nightmares, I would dream of that night scene, the killer's one-handed ring twirling right before my eyes. But over time, I gradually moved on, gradually forgot. I thought the pain of the past would end there. Until half a year ago, I saw that movement again. Half a year ago, Mark Collins risked his life to save me from the car accident and injured 2 of his fingers. He didn't think much of it. Seeing me heartbroken and trying every way to treat him, he smiled and comforted me. It's just not as flexible as before. I'll get used to it with practice. Then, that evening, as we sat cuddling on the sofa watching TV, I saw that movement again. How can I put it? Some things you think you've completely forgotten. But when they actually appear before you, the memory returns in full, cleared down to the smallest detail. His movement perfectly matched the one in my memory. The rhythm, the curve, the manner, and the small details. Exactly the same. Impossible. In the quiet room, Eleanor Vance slammed her hand on the table, her face flushed, shouting at me. You're just trying to save yourself. How can you conclude Mark was a murderer based on just one movement? I looked at her impassively. Of course, I wouldn't do that. So I started verifying. The serial killing case had a total of 5 incidents, spanning 4 cities. I took advantage of various opportunities to confirm his whereabouts at the time of those incidents. They all matched. I found a file in the house summarizing information about that serial killing case. He explained it was research material for defending the suspect when he was a second-year master's student. But after I double-checked with attorney Kwan, Mark had started collecting that file since his sophomore year of college. After the case, there were public discussions. Psychologists analyzed that the killer had an innate hatred for disabled people. When committing the crime, he didn't feel he was doing evil. On the contrary, he felt he was ridding humanity of a burden. I deliberately took him to a center for disabled people to do charity work. Even though he tried to hide it, I could easily sense his resistance and annoyance when interacting with them. Later, he inadvertently blurted out, "Disabled people are God's failed creations. They shouldn't exist." Eleanor Vance's angry shout tore through the night. What does that prove? You're reasoning backward from the result. You only see what you want to see. I slowly nodded. You're right. Those things could only create suspicion. What truly made me confirm it was something he said to me one evening. Eleanor Vance said, trembling. What did he say? I let out a breath, slowly recalling. It was also a rainy night. He got drunk outside, and I went to pick him up. On the way back, I suddenly turned and asked him if he wanted dumpling soup, with or without scallions. That was my mother's catchphrase. I wasn't sure if he remembered, but psychology books say serial killers like to repeatedly relive their crimes, recalling every detail, every image. My mother and I look very much alike, so when I pressed my face close to his, he squinted at me, his gaze becoming distant. In the rain, he asked in confusion, "Didn't she die?" I asked again, "How did she die?" He pointed to my neck and said, "Here, slit throat." My mother was the only one among the 5 victims who died from blood loss from the carotid artery. Eleanor Vance slumped onto the table, gasping for breath, her back heaving. Impossible. My son is dead, murdered by you. You can say whatever you want. You just want to escape, to stop me from submitting evidence to the police. I leaned back in my chair, saying calmly, partly yes. After all, if I'm arrested, I'll definitely have to reveal my motive. The truth that Mark Collins was a serial killer will surface. Mom, what was the name of your live stream room again? Ah, truth will never be buried. Didn't you come here to seek the truth? Eleanor Vance turned her head, staring at me with bloodshot eyes. From our first meeting at the funeral, despite the pain of losing her son, she had maintained the composure befitting someone who had taught for many years. But now, her face was contorted, her eyes revealing a fierce cruelty. as if she would devour me in the next second. In others' eyes, this might be a Rashomon case, but only I know this is the sole truth. Looking out the window, I took a deep breath. The above is my motive. Once I was determined, the method was much simpler. It just required constant calculation, experimentation, and simulation. I knew he was allergic to daffodils, leading to total paralysis. Karen always liked to compete with me, inviting us over every time her husband bought something new. Tom Dwyer across the hall often deliberately took out the trash when I was coming upstairs, pretending it was a chance encounter. Moreover, I am very patient. Even if this time hadn't succeeded, there would have been a next time. In fact, that day wasn't the first attempt, but the seventh. Eleanor Vance suddenly screamed, her face a mask of despair and horror. Mark was paralyzed, not unconscious. In other words, he was conscious throughout the whole process, right? He slowly, helplessly watched himself die. I sighed. So you haven't watched that video footage? Then don't. But I must make it clear. Compared to the other victims, his death was too lenient, not enough to atone for the crimes he committed. So that was the end he deserved. Dawn was breaking. Outside the window, police sirens wailed, tearing through the early morning calm after the storm. I brushed off my pants and stood up. Lily is your biological granddaughter. Please take care of her from now on. I hope she can grow up healthy and become a good person, unlike her father, and unlike her mother. The sound of footsteps approached from a distance. I turned around, facing the two police officers behind me. They glanced past me, looking towards Eleanor Vance. Mrs. Vance, you said you had important evidence to submit. We apologize. The roads were damaged last night, so we were late. You're safe now. Please tell us what you have. I bowed my head, saying nothing, awaiting my fate. It was a foggy day. I took Lily to the train station to see Eleanor Vance off. She still wore that thin jacket, one hand carrying the black bag, the other the old travel mug. But compared to when she arrived, her posture seemed much more stooped. Lily was playing on a nearby seat. Eleanor Vance looked at me indifferently. I'm only doing this for Lily. That morning, she hadn't submitted that message. She explained to the police that she had intended to trick me into confessing so she could record it as evidence. But unfortunately, she hadn't gathered any useful information. The police reprimanded her and left. Now, she looked straight at me, her eyelids heavy. That night, you braved the storm to come to my place. You must have guessed I hadn't watched that camera footage yet, right? Guessed I hadn't given the message to the police. So you came to me for a last-ditch effort? I nodded in acknowledgement. Before, you didn't even dare to step into my house, nor look towards the bathroom. That's the innate weakness of a mother. So I guessed that in a short period, you wouldn't dare to watch it, and naturally, what you hadn't watched, you couldn't immediately hand over to the police. She said coldly. Were you sure you could make me believe your words? I shook my head, no. Before I left, I was prepared to be separated from Lily. So do you think I believe you now? I looked at her, half believing, half doubting. I didn't say the second half. Half belief was enough. The other half was built on her understanding of her own son. She often talked with Mark Collins, so she could use my words to verify some judgments only she knew. Besides, the secret Mark Collins mentioned in the message had, more or less, hinted at a connection. More importantly, apart from this reason, I had no other convincing motive for murder, and only this reason could make me do these things. As Eleanor Vance was about to turn and leave, I couldn't help but ask, I still don't understand. Why did you insist from the very beginning that I killed Mark Collins? She looked towards the white clouds on the distant horizon, her voice old and far away. The second time Mark came to Kalispell to visit me, we talked about life and death. He joked with me that if he died someday, and his ring was found on his index finger instead of his ring finger, it meant he had been murdered. When the police informed me of his death, I saw in his photo that his ring was askew and worn on his index finger. I was stunned. This was a point I had completely overlooked. Then why were you so sure it was me? I was only half believing, half doubting myself. She turned her head to look at me. Suddenly, her gaze swept past me, lingering. I turned around. Lily stood silently behind me, her expression blank. Before I could say anything, she raised her hand, pointed to the electronic board above, and said with a smile, Grandma's train is about to leave. Eleanor Vance left, alone and in sorrow. She said she would never step out of Kalispell again. I drove Lily out of the underground parking lot. The parking attendant was watching The Shawshank Redemption on a tablet. As I scanned the payment code, the movie showed the warden, about to face his reckoning, turning to look at the Bible on the wall. His judgment cometh, and that right soon. The barrier lifted. I was unconsciously dazed. Lily, sitting in the back, reminded me, Mommy, let's go. I snapped back to reality and pressed the accelerator, driving out of the parking lot with a troubled mind, turning onto the ramp, driving into the dense fog.